Welcome to the Cello Brain podcast. Today is a very special episode because exactly 1 month ago, I met Sarah Godfrey. We met at an event that we both went to. We work with these two amazing coaches, and Sarah and I happened to sit across from each other at dinner with a whole bunch of women. There was 200 women there, and we happened to sit across from each other on day one. And the instant we started talking, we went deep into the correlations that you will hear about in this podcast. I'm not going to give anything away yet, but I would like to introduce Sarah Godfrey. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So, Sarah, she is a movement analyst and a somatic movement therapist, and one of the most inspiring entrepreneurs I've met. She loves working with leaders and helping them be more influential. That's what she specializes in. Sarah helps them move, pun intended, towards the person they want to become by developing their identities through body language skills. And if you have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that identity is one of the things I talk about most. So I cannot wait to hear from Sarah how she does this. So, Sarah, can you tell us more about your story? How did you even become a movement analyst? And uh, why do you do what you do?
Yeah. The reason I got into all of this is I grew up dancing. I studied dance when I was in college. And while I was there, I was going through a rough time. And I also had to take a class about movement analysis. And that was when it started changing how I thought about movement. But I started to notice that all of my dance professors were giving me corrections that kind of had a single thread, which was basically that they were telling me to take up more space, which was exactly what I didn't want to do at that time with everything I was dealing with emotionally. But I started to think that maybe if I changed how I was moving, it would help me get more comfortable, literally, mentally, emotionally, to take up more space. So I started doing a whole bunch of different things. One of those things is I just like lifted my eyes. I lifted my eyes. Sorry, I tapped my mic. Lifted my eyes, and it was uncomfortable at first. But all of those things that I started to do changed how I felt about myself and my place in the world. It changed everything for me simply by just changing how I moved. I went from being a girl who, when I was rehearsing one semester on stage, I was like front and center. My dance professor accused me of trying to hide. And I was like, how does he know? Right. I went from being that um, I run into him years later, same professor. I walked by him and he was like, hey, did you get taller? And I just laughed and said no and walked away. But then I was just like, but I did in here. And it was all because of movement.
Wow. That story, it hits me emotionally every time I hear you tell it, Sarah, because when we feel taller, like I'm sitting up taller if you're watching the YouTube version, you feel more confident, you feel more empowered. Tell us more, like what does body language coaching and that awareness that you have about how your body even moves in space, how does that impact your life and your goals and what would you say is the biggest impact?
Oh man. Well, I am very biased, but movement and body language, it's everything.
Hmm.
It's about who you are being on that deep fundamental level, right? Because
Hmm.
the way that we move, it doesn't just communicate to others, though it definitely does. It communicates to ourselves. But the cool thing is that it's like a two-way path, right? It goes both ways. So it can communicate how I'm feeling, but it also can influence how I'm feeling, can influence what I believe about me. It can influence what I believe about where I belong, all just simply through the way that I am in the world because I have a body. It always
Yeah.
goes with me, right?
Hmm. That is so fascinating. And I'm just thinking about how the movements that we do from a day-to-day basis, we don't really we don't really pay attention to
Hmm.
how our body's moving. Like we sit like this all day, hunched over a computer, like four screens, and
Hmm. Yeah.
we then stand up and then we go pick up our child, and it's like we hug them, but it's like you don't really pay attention to what it feels like and how your arms are moving and how they are moving. Just that awareness changes so much. I really notice this with the cello. Like when I play the cello, I need to know how my body moves in a three-dimensional way. And that is why when we had that conversation 1 month ago, why we connected so quickly is because with the cello, you have to learn body language and body awareness, and you're literally communicating without words. So tell me more about that. How does your body awareness affect your communication skills?
Um, well, let me tell you a story about a woman that I knew. So she was talking with her husband, and he was like, "Hey, every time I come to kiss you, you're pulling away." And she's like, "No, I
Hmm,
literally am not. Like, I make contact with you."
interesting.
She's like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? But because of body awareness, she started to notice, like, what's going on when I do this? What's going
Mm.
on? And she was like, "Oh my gosh, he's right."
Hmm,
Yeah. Our minds are interesting because they like to keep things status quo. Like our brain, its job
mhm,
is to keep the whole organ, your whole self safe, right? And so one of the things that it's like, okay, unknown, scary. So it likes to keep status quo. It also likes to confirm your biases, and some of those being about who you are. So sometimes when you're communicating with others, maybe you're not aware exactly of how you're actually showing up. But if you can have that body awareness and go, oh wait, I'm pulling away, or oh wait, I'm a little aggressive, whatever it is, or maybe I'm being um, too gentle when I need to hold my ground, right?
mhm,
Those things show up in your body. And so when you have that body awareness, it kind of does two things. First of all, it shows you how you are being, how you're showing up in that moment. It also gives you the option of what you can do instead if you don't like how you're
mhm.
showing up. So it gives you your ability to choose back.
That's amazing. Like the status quo thing that you mentioned, first of all, we get into these habits
Hmm.
and not being aware of what how we're moving makes us stay at that status quo, the thing that we're used to doing.
Yeah.
And because who we want to become and the person we want to be shows up in a certain way, if we don't start moving in the direction and moving like that person, we're always going to stay the person we are now. So
Hmm. Always.
the question that I want you to think about as a listener is who is the person you want to become? And as we're having this conversation, Sarah and I want you to think about how does that person move? What kinds of movements do they do on a daily basis? Do they, for that matter, exercise? Do they play the cello? Do they hug their kids every day? Do they kiss their husband? Do they, like, what movements, physical movements does that person do every day? And Sarah, one thing that you mentioned when we were talking the first time is how your body language is like, is it 91% of your communication, or
93.
what was
So
93?
93%, but that's body
Wow.
language and tone, which also
Body
has
language
to do
and
with
tone.
what's going on in your
Okay.
body. So,
Hmm. So
yeah,
words being only 7%.
words are only
That's
7%.
crazy. That's crazy. And like we're both entrepreneurs and we know that our words, uh, someone that I was actually in a challenge this morning, she says, your words are everything. It's all you've got. And like, let's say in an ad, you see these words and that is all you've got. But people don't see you in ads. People who you experience every day, they see you. And 93% of that is your tone and your body language.
Yeah.
So tell me more about how your body language can actually change your emotions. Like help you, like, if we get back to that topic of becoming the person you want to be, how can it move you towards that?
Like I said, it's like Sorry, I know we're on a podcast, but it's
Oh
like a
yeah,
lemon.
no,
You
there's
know
a
what a lemon
YouTube
state is?
version,
It's like
so
an infinity symbol.
yeah, like
Right?
this.
So you
Hmm.
can imagine that like in one of those bubbles on one side is like what I do with my body. And then on the other side, in the other bubble is like how I feel. And so they feed and influence each other. It goes around and around and around and around like an infinity, follows the infinity symbol lines around each other. And so um, our emotions are felt, they're physical experiences, right? And
Hmm.
so if we're wanting to shift how we're feeling, we can just change what we're doing with our body because
Hmm.
then your physical experience has shifted.
Hmm. Hmm. Can you give me an example of like what's one thing someone could do right now to switch from feeling afraid to feeling confident?
Okay, so I would say if you were feeling confident, what would you do? Right?
Hmm.
And the reason why I word it that way is because it's going to look different for me than it is for somebody else. And
That is so
I
true.
want it to feel authentic.
Yeah.
There's some really loud people who, when they're confident, they're going to talk louder, they're going to get closer to people, they're going to move big. Whereas somebody else who feels confident in a different way, it's going to look different. So I would just ask that
Mm.
question. Think about moments when you felt confident. See if you can kind of capture the idea of like, what was I doing with my body in that instant? Or just pretend if I did feel confident, what would I do with my body? You can do that with literally anything. So for me, I would stand tall. I'd
Mhm.
feel my weight firmly planted into the ground. And I'd also feel ease in my body. So I'd let go
Mm.
of any tension. I would imagine images of like water, anything that's fluid, kind of
Mm.
helps me let go of tension and put a smile on my face. I'd think of something that helps me feel confident, maybe to change like the spark in my eye.
Yeah.
Um, I would change my voice. I would notice how I'm using that when I'm talking to other people. If I was feeling confident, again, what would I do with my voice? Would I be scared
Mm.
to use it? Some people, when they're talking and they're not feeling confident, they'll start to slowly taper off the end of their sentence. So, yeah, no, they'll
Yes.
kind of like pull it back in because
Yeah.
they're afraid. Like, what if you just let your words out? Like, that's
Mm.
going to change. And like I said, since it goes back and forth, like what I do with my body changes how I feel.
Hmm.
Then if I can change what I'm doing with my body and that idea of like, oh, what would I do if I was confident? Then lo and behold, I'm going to start to feel that. So then what I'm doing with my body is actually developing the feeling that I want to have.
Mm. So what you're saying is that the body language actually comes first.
It
Like, would
can.
you do, yeah, like if you want to feel that way, like you have to start being that, like be,
Mhm.
do, have. You be the person you want to be, you do the things that they do, and then you have the result.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, it was like you were describing the perfect cello posture because, and I'll actually demonstrate. I have my cello right there. So people watching on YouTube, you can watch this. So what Sarah was saying, like you'd feel grounded, you'd feel the ground under your feet, and in this case would be like your tailbone and your sitting bones. You feel that and very grounded. And I actually describe this as being a tree. Your feet
Hmm.
are planted in the ground. Your spine is the trunk, and then your arms are the branches, which can move freely. And there's freedom in the spine. Now, the interesting thing is like the relaxation part of the body. As you were talking about that and you were describing the different things you would do, I was naturally doing that too. And I was like, this is exactly what I teach my students. I teach like this relaxation. And then you were talking about the voice. Like, what would you do with your voice? And like, even just the sparkle in your eye. This is like the sound of the cello then coming out in the way because of the relaxation you're feeling in your body. Literally, this, if you're having a hard time creating a good sound on the cello, think about what your body is doing. Take the things that Sarah is telling you at this on this podcast and apply that directly to your cello playing, because the only way that we can communicate through sound is by using our body movements to produce that sound.
Yep.
And if there's that tension, you're going to have a tense sound. And it's the same thing with your voice. Like I could actually hear a difference in Sarah's voice as she was talking, and I'm sure you guys heard it too.
Mhm.
The listeners, like there's this relaxation, like openness that arrived in her voice. And she has a beautiful speaking voice to begin with, but then it started coming even more alive. So I'll come back closer to my mic for the podcast. There we go.
Yeah,
That is so
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. And it's cool because then you think about it, people that when they play their cello,
Yeah.
they are going to develop the ability to feel in their body what it is to be confident and
Hmm.
have that ease. And then they can access that when they're not playing cello, right? So
Hmm.
then if they're like, okay, what does that feel like in my body? And they can just return to it.
Hmm. Exactly. And that makes me think like being aware of your body language can probably help you also be more aware of what's happening internally.
Oh
Like if
yeah.
we reverse it. So what would you say about that?
So it's a way to just understand like what's really going on inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember I went to this meeting and I was like, oh, I'm sitting all by myself. Why is that? I came here to meet people, right? And and then someone came and sat next to me and I literally pulled, if any people on YouTube can tell, but I pulled as far away from her as I could without getting out
Oh,
of my chair. And I didn't mean
interesting.
to, but I
Yeah.
noticed that that's what I was doing. And I was like,
Mhm.
what's going on here? You know? But I didn't first notice like, oh, how I was feeling. I noticed what my body was doing. And
Mm,
then because I noticed what my body was doing, I was like, oh, hey, Sarah, what's going on here? You know, oh, it's
interesting.
because I think this, and this is what I actually am believing right now. And this is how I'm feeling. And I was able to then just build that awareness and shift things for myself.
That is so interesting. Like I know that I've done that. Like if I'm actually wanting, like my head says, my logic says, I want to go talk to people. But my emotion and my identity is of someone who doesn't go talk to people. I am naturally going to start like hiding and making
Mhm.
myself smaller. And I know that I've done this. Like I go to the corner of the room instead of the middle. And simple, like how you move your entire body in in a large space, like the fact that you were sitting alone in that instance.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And now, like, well, let's say that you are trying to get better at communicating with a loved one, like your husband, for example. How could you use body language awareness to know what other people are feeling too?
So, that is a tricky thing. I always want to lead with the caveat that there isn't a one-to-one correlation in body language. Meaning,
Mm,
even though you will see this. If you ever look up body language stuff, they're going to be like, if it's their arms are crossed, it definitely means they're feeling this way. However, humans are more complex than that.
hmm
So, like, I could have my arms crossed because I'm cold or because I'm feeling small or because I am defensive, or it could just be like I feel awkward and don't know what to do with my arms, right? It can
hmm
be a number of things. And so we want to be careful to not be like, I for sure know what's going on, just because this is what's happening with the arms.
Yeah.
But when you know somebody well, you will start to notice. You all, like if your husband opens the cupboard a certain way, you can be like, oh, he's mad. Right?
Yeah.
You can
We all
tell.
kind of start to tell those things
Yeah.
over the years.
Yeah. And so I would say when you start to notice those things, rather than just assuming, but like
Mm,
any kind of change, y is a change in what's going on inside. All movement is an expression,
hmm
meaning all movement is communicating or expressing some kind of need or feeling or desire or thought. So rather than just being like, oh, I know what's up and you can ask about it, right? You can use it as kind of like an indication of like, oh, maybe I should talk about something, you know?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
kind of funny because like with my husband, sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Da da da. And he'll be like, "That's so creepy. How do you know?"
It's like you're
And
reading
I'm
his
like,
mind.
it's literally there for everyone to see.
That's so
Right?
interesting. But the fact that you say it's literally there for everyone to see,
Yeah.
there's some people who just don't notice those types of things, and they're missing out on valuable insights on the people that they love.
Hmm.
Um, like obviously, like as you said, like you see them opening up the cupboard a certain way or like slamming a door, like those types of things are very obvious. But let's say it's like touching their nose while you're talking. Like I know that that means they want to say something. Or like let's say
Or it
they
could mean that their nose itches.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, and but this it's like the little things.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like I just saw you scratch. I'm being super aware of this right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But I saw you scratch. So that could literally mean your cheek was itchy, or it
Hmm.
could mean you
Yeah.
have this thought that you want to say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So there's
yeah.
like, and this is when you get into like deeper movement analysis, but
Uh-huh.
like there's different things. Like some things are just seeking comfort for self. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I adjust
Mm-hmm.
in my chair, it's not like, oh, she's feeling this about what's going on. It's like, no, like my
Yeah.
legs needed to move, or
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
my cheek was itching, so I
Yeah.
scratched it, or
Yeah.
like my wrist started bugging me because I was leaning on it. So then I leaned the other way,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing deeper beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which I think sometimes when you get into body language, it's like, oh, everything must like it does mean something, but some of it's
Yeah.
not a very deep meaning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like everything, there has to be the balance between you can use this as a very valuable tool and you have to
Yeah.
know the different things that it could mean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
that's
just
interesting.
ask about it if you notice
Hmm.
something going
Hmm.
on.
Yeah.
And I don't assume that I know for sure what's going on because the interesting thing
Hmm.
is that we develop patterns
Yeah.
and those get really ingrained. And sometimes we've like kind of moved past like feeling, but like we've developed this shape, like my body is stuck here because I'm always at my computer, like I'm hunched over, that it's going to affect how I feel about me. But I
Hmm.
might not be like, oh, I am a horrible person, you know.
Yeah.
It could just be like, oh, I was sitting at my computer all day and I've been doing that for many years. And so therefore my
Hmm.
body has just really started to decide that's where it belongs, right? It's
Hmm.
tricky.
Hmm. Hmm. For sure. But all of that shows really the value of body awareness for yourself and for others. You
Yeah.
can deepen your relationships, you can increase your communication. And on the communication side of things, previous guests and all the podcasts I've done so far, there's always a little hint of business. I adore entrepreneurship, and I can see by the way you're nodding and smiling that you do too. So tell me more about how you really develop leaders with body awareness. Like what would you say about leadership and what you teach?
It's interesting. There's this book. I'm trying to remember who wrote it. It's called, I think it's called Act Like a Leader, Think Like a Leader.
Hmm.
Um, She does research, like it's very, I love reading things that are based on like sound science, research, all that.
Yeah.
But she actually talks about the fact that you have to do leadership things, be a leader to become a leader. It's not like a thought
Mm-hmm.
that you have first. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually as you start to move through the world like a leader that you become one. And that you also find out like what kind of a leader you are, what kind of a leader you want to be. She uses the word outsight rather than an insight, which is like happening
Huh.
internally. But it's like as I go through life and I start doing things, then I gain outsights, as she calls them,
Hmm.
to understand. And it only comes through my experience of what I am actually literally doing. And so you can develop that body awareness to kind of help you move towards the things that you want. The different actions that you take, but also the way you're taking those actions? How are you moving towards them? Because
Hmm.
if you're just changing the actions, but you're bringing yourself the way you've always, like, the tension you've always had, or the way you've always, you're going to get the same results quite often, because
Hmm.
it's like taking, I was just thinking of this morning, it's like taking ingredients, um, and being like, well, I'm tired of making this same thing. So I'm going to get out this other recipe, but I don't change the ingredients that I'm actually using. I can't end up with a different meal, right? And so you have to change, like, not just the actions, but like the way you're approaching them, which is what you fully do through body awareness, is being able to change, like, how am I actually approaching this? Because body awareness, it's just self-awareness. That's all it is. And
Hmm.
it's because you'll find out your thoughts for what's going on in your body. You're going to find out your feelings. You're going to find out how you respond to others. You're going to find out, like, how you really feel when you're taking a risk.
Yeah.
Um, all of that is body awareness.
And I'm just thinking like how that could actually impact the speed at which you can actually see changes in your business. So
Yeah,
if you are the kind of person who hesitates and is really scared to take the risks that will actually grow your business, grow, move you towards your goals, then you won't take that action speedily. But if there's anything that I know about business is that if you act fast and you just do it, then you actually have data to examine, like, oh, was this actually effective?
for
No?
sure.
Amazing. Now I know what not to do,
Hmm.
or I know how to adjust. So having the body awareness and just simply the self-awareness, it's all connected. It can be like a superpower.
Oh, for sure.
That's
For
really, really
sure.
interesting.
Yeah. And like you said, it is a way to really compound your efforts,
Yeah.
because we love mindset work. We love focusing on, like, oh, that thought isn't serving you, but, like, what if there was a way to get your entire self on board with the thoughts you want to have and with the
Mm-hmm.
actions you're wanting to take, the be, do,
Mm-hmm.
have stuff, right? What if
Yeah.
there was a way to really get to the root of it, and then you see the changes happening faster?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
like, one of the images that I work with, it's like if I am putting myself, all my work, towards the message of my business, or, and then rather than being like a fire hose, it's like a hose that has, like, leaks off to the side, so you're still
Mm-hmm.
gonna get the message across, but, like, some of it's escaping in other places, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have as much potency.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can imagine this being very true in like a sales presentation in person to a group of like 25 people, like the top of a company. You have to present this to them. And let's say you stand there with like authority and with confidence and with that feeling that you are so skilled, you're in the right place, versus like a little bit of a hunch and maybe you're tapering off your words, exactly what Sarah's talking about, like the opposite. You're just going to come across with so much more credibility
Hmm.
if you have those skills. And
Yeah.
I can also see this even on Zoom. Like let's say you have a sales conversation on Zoom, having that body awareness is so important. Now, as a cellist and a cello coach, I have to say, cello is an amazing way to learn this body awareness because you
For sure.
start simply. Like you start with your posture and then you
Mhm.
kind of work into other body parts. Like at the most professional level, you start working on facial expressions, which direction you're looking at what point in the music.
Mhm.
All of those little things make such a big difference. And like even the three-dimensional aspect of the curvature of the strings, you have to move your arm in a three-dimensional way and make tiny adjustments that
Mhm.
make a massive difference on the sound.
Yeah.
So if you are looking for a way to learn body language, I would highly recommend the cellist, but of course I'm a little bit biased. But what I do know from my dance experience is that any kind of movement that activates your entire brain, such as dance, such as playing the cello, and the movement coaching that Sarah does, it is life-changing. And that's what we really talk about today. So to end with, Sarah, I would love to know, where can people find you?
So right now, the best place to find me, where I'm most active, is on Instagram. And my handle is at like the letter I, A-M, and then Sarah Godfrey. Sarah is spelled with an H, so Sarahgodfrey. I am Sarah
Perfect.
Godfrey. Yeah.
Perfect. And I will definitely link that in the show notes and the description box below so that you can find Sarah easily and experience her. Like, if you can meet her in person, that is quite the experience. Like, sitting across from you at dinner, like the fact that we were across from each other, first of all, was impactful. And then I got to talk to you when we were standing. It's just like, it's so interesting. I can almost not put words to it, what it's like communicating in person with you. It's so amazing. You're amazing, Sarah. I
Oh,
looked up to you in so
thank
many
you.
ways.
Thanks,
And you're
Ine.
so skilled. It really comes through in every word you say.
Oh, thank you. That means
Mhm.
so much. I love your work, and
Thank
I love
you.
watching you play the cello and then hear you talking about it, and just the way that you show how far-reaching the effects of learning cello are is
Mm.
really beautiful.
Thank you so much. That is so kind. I truly want to make a difference, as I can see you do as well. So go find Sarah and watch out for what she does in this world. It's going to be amazing. Well,
Thank
thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Sarah. And I always end with a surprise question. So I
Awesome.
said to end, where can I find Sarah? But I was lying. I have one more question for you.
Great.
And I always end with, if you were to learn the cello, what would be your dream song?
Dream song. Um, and it can be covers of things.
Can be literally anything.
We were talking about like Jessica's theme from The Man from Snowy River.
Yes,
I love that song. That would be a beautiful one to be able to play.
that would be gorgeous on the cello. And I just realized there was one more thing that we never discussed on the podcast
Oh,
episode,
let's
and
hear
that's
it.
the fact that Sarah plays the piano and the ukulele. And I just want you all the listeners, to know that about her, because she embodies every aspect of this work. She knows that by learning an instrument and keeping at it for her entire life, that it develops her brain. Like, she is not a quitter. She has continued. And that is such a testimony to you exploring all the different areas of what you do. So just wanted to give you that, because
Thank
it's
you.
truly amazing, Sarah.
Oh,
Like,
thanks. I
you
think
think
it's
about
just it,
self-development in every area.
yeah, it's been for me because I focus so much on dance. And then now it's like I focus so much on
Mhm.
my business. It is really nice to have something just for me,
Yeah.
just to express and to have fun.
Hmm.
Literally just something that is just for fun
Hmm.
and that isn't touched. Like it influences my work, but I'm
Yeah.
not like trying to make money off of it. Whereas like a lot of the
Hmm.
movement stuff that I do besides, has gotten sucked into my business, which is a great and it's not
Yeah.
nice to have, but it's nice to just also have something that like builds me, but also
Hmm.
I don't have to worry about it.
Hmm.
You know?
Exactly. There's less pressure.
Yeah.
It's, as you said, something for just you, and it's fun, and it's actually something that's going to grow your business because it's
Yeah.
growing your brain.
hmm
That's amazing. Like, have you seen any changes in yourself, like after you play piano versus before? What do you notice there?
Oh. Well, first of all, I'm not like an expert in either of these things. Um, but I I just like the way that I feel,
Hmm.
you know, and that I can play around with sound to express how I feel.
That's
Um,
cool.
and it's nice because like I can't dance the way I used to. There's no way. I'm 41. I I can't leap and turn and all the things that I used to do. but there's still other ways for me to express myself.
Mhm.
And so just that ability to express myself and to tackle a problem just for fun, to have something that um, adds to my life and doesn't have
Mhm.
a like it doesn't I don't have a lot of expectation from it, But
Yeah.
like my stress, it's gotten down. Like that's one of the ways that I handle it is like, okay, I gotta get this out so that I
Mm.
can keep on doing all the great things that I need to do. So
Mm. It's a catalyst,
yeah,
the catalyst to the goals that you have.
yeah,
That's amazing. So, so cool. And we should, I want to have you back on the
for
podcast for
sure.
sure. And we can talk more about that.
I would love that.
But thank you again so, so much from the bottom of my heart for being here.
Of
And
course.
I know that the listeners are feeling uplifted by who you are, what you do. So thank you.
Thanks, Ina. It's been a joy.